Now I have to find, okay. So this meeting is a call to order. Annual notice of this meeting was provided to the Star Ledger, the Home News Tribune, and the Highland Park Planet on January 29th, 2021. In addition, notice of this meeting via Zoom was faxed to the Home News Tribune and emailed to the Star Ledger and the Highland Park Planet on September 7th, 2021, and was posted on the borough website at hpborough.com and on the bulletin board at Borough Hall on September 7th. I'm going to remind everyone to speak into their microphones. Jen, roll call, please.
Ms. Hammond?
Here.
Mr. Brusher?
Here.
Ms. Hadhazi?
Here.
Mr. Hale?
Here.
Ms. Hand?
Here.
Mr. Kluger?
Here.
Mr. Linares?
Here.
Mr. Millay?
Here.
Mr. Nolan? Mr. Pearlman?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Constantine? Mr. Koch?
Here.
It sounds like Jim is not here. Is that the case? Yeah, but
Yeah.
Bruce is here. Okay. Great. Great. So our first order of business this evening is we have just minutes from our June and July meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the June meeting, or June minutes, I should say? And hearing none, motion to accept the June minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Is that Jeff? Seconded by, I'm not sure who.
Pedrick.
Pedrick.
Pager. All in, Roger, you'd think after 10 years I would know. All in favor? Or do we do a roll call?
Perfectly acceptable. All in favor is okay.
All in favor? Aye.
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 And any opposed? And then any abstentions? It looks like, it looks like we had a full house. Everyone was here. Okay. Okay, I will now then move to our July 8th minutes. Again, does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the July 8th minutes? Hearing none, I would accept them. Oh, I'm sorry, Alan?
Yes, on page 15, in the second paragraph, Jen he said that it does seem like you have all your ducks in a row. It does not.
Ah,
Got it.
Tremendous job on this.
yeah, there's a lot of minutes, a lot of words. There's a lot of background noise also. I don't know who that's from. Okay, so are there any other comments or corrections about the July 8th minutes? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes?
That was Alan Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by, maybe that was Rebecca, I'm not sure.
Yep.
Great. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Do we have any abstentions? And then I think just Matt and Paul were absent at that
I
meeting.
need to abstain.
So Matt will abstain. All right. Let's see, I guess that brings us to our next order of business, which is the resolution for the cannabis ordinance, which I don't have the number of in front of me, but Roger, I'll let you take it away since there was some little glitch, and just to see if anyone, I guess you can introduce what we're doing and then answer any questions that anybody might have.
At your July 8th meeting, 2021, you ended up reviewing, as you were required to do, ordinances that have to do with land use activities. You did that in regard to the cannabis ordinance, and you ultimately indicated that you felt that this was not inconsistent with the master plan, which is what the statute says. It's awkwardly worded, but nonetheless, that's the way it works. So you ultimately found that to be the case. Excuse me. This resolution reflects what you did, and I apologize. It turns out that a couple of weeks ago, this resolution had been completed, and then there was a vacation, and then sickness, and then somebody else left, and then somebody else went away for 3 days, and that's why you just got it today. None of which are particularly good excuses, but that's the reality. So I apologize for that, but nonetheless, this is an accurate, I believe, representation of the action that you took on the 8th of July, 2021. This is really just a ministerial act. I put that on the record because it is important that you did the action on the 8th of July. That's the actual action that you needed to take, and that the governing body ultimately then adopted this ordinance prior to the 22nd of August, 2021. Why is that important? Because you needed, as a community, to take an action if you were going to limit in any way the statute that had been passed as a result of the referendum that had been passed some 2 or 3 years ago. And you have done that, and therefore you have the right now to take the action that you have now taken, limiting certain elements of the statute by way of cannabis activity, and you've allowed it in some other areas. So that's what you've done, and now you are in a position that if, in fact, during the next 5 years, there is a desire to make modifications, you have, excuse me, you have the right to do that. But if you don't, you certainly can continue on as you have it now in your ordinance for the next 5 years. You are not allowed to eliminate anything that you have permitted for the next 5 years, but you could add things if you choose. And when I say you, meaning the community through the governing body, and then it would come back to you again as the planning board. So with that, I would offer the resolution to you for your approval.
Okay. Does anyone have
Yes,
any
Alan.
comments or questions based on the final ordinance? Was that Alan?
Yes. Roger, what's the phrase? Medical cannabis dispensaries.
Yes,
They also have to be in the CBD or the commercial zone?
I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I believe the answer is yes, though. That was my recollection.
It would seem on page 3 and 4 where you discuss that, you might want to have, it sort of begs the way it's written.
I'll be happy, you know what? I'll be happy to take a look at the ordinance again. I didn't put it in my file. And if it in fact is, as I think it is, limited to those zones, I will add that language.
Yeah, that is what we discussed at the meeting, that that in terms of restricted areas, the way it was defined was that it was in the CBD. But that, right, that was sort of, that was a main factor, I think, in terms of
the way it's
where
written,
they could be located.
it could be in doubt whether it's in CBD or commercial zone. I think if you just move a couple of words around,
Yeah.
it'd be much clearer.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
Does anyone else?
Yeah, I
Have
had
any-
one
Uh-huh.
question on the whereas clause, and sorry if I'm being a little
There's-
picky.
There's lots of whereas clauses. Which
All right,
one?
whereas on the last page, on the signature page, page 4,
Yes,
the important one, that says, I agree that we certainly found that it's not inconsistent with the master plan, but there's also language that says that we have found that it is in the best interest of the residents of the borough of Highland Park. I'm not sure others can
Yeah, that was
disagree with me. I don't know that we agree, we came to that conclusion, or we were just looking at the consistency with the master plan, or are you saying that in order to find it not inconsistent, we have to find it in the best interest of the residents of Highland.
No, what I did is the language in the ordinance indicates that the borough council found it to be in the best interest. This ordinance was and the way it was handled in terms of cannabis was in the best interest of the residents of Highland Park. Now, what I did is I included that language in. If you believe that in fact what you want to say is that you find it to be consistent with or again, not inconsistent with the master plan, and choose not to include the language that's in the ordinance, that's fine. It doesn't affect the ordinance. The language will still be in the ordinance, but it will not be. If you want it not to be in that resolution, I'll be happy to take it out.
I would agree with Alan's assessment. I don't think that because it implies that was our assessment and we really didn't put that forth.
Yeah, that's not our role, so keep it to our role.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to take that language out.
Okay. Anybody else comments about the ordinance? Okay. Hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve the ordinance with the 2 revisions as indicated by that Roger accepted from the planning board.
Motion to approve?
Was that Pedrick?
I can second.
Okay. And that was seconded by, was that Jeffrey?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great. Jen, roll call, please.
Mr. Brescher,
Yes.
Ms. Hadhazy,
Yes.
Mr. Hale,
Abstention?
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Kluger,
Yes.
Mr. Linares,
I think I abstained as well.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Pearlman,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes,
and Ms. Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So that I guess concludes our official business. I guess we could, Jen, is there anyone from the public attending the meeting?
Let me double check. There is no one.
Sorry about that. Nobody. Okay, so in theory, I will open, or in practice, I will open the meeting to the public, but seeing that there is nobody from the public wishing to speak at this time, there will be no public portion for public comment. I think the only other things we really have on our agenda are reports, but I do want to make sure that I have to apologize. I've been traveling and I, as you could tell, had some computer issues as I was trying to open up some of the materials. So I do have notes that I know Alan Williams had some comments about 238 Cleveland. So I just want to make sure that you have a second to ask those questions. And then there might be something about the redevelopment plan also. So Alan, did you have questions or comments about the 238?
yes. Who would be, is it Bruce who would be the person who would worry about compliance for 238 as far as environmental issues?
Yes, Alan, I would think I would be the primary person, yes.
Oh, okay. They never, or suburban development never produced a phase 2 report. The LSRP thing, I think, is inadequate. That it mentions that they never did any
The ground penetrating radar, Alan?
on lot 33. Thank you. They did not do any magnetometer studies on there where the phase 1 said they should. And the LSRP just didn't mention, just rolled over that. the testing that was to make the neighbors feel more comfortable. It's from a sample from somewhere on the lot. Given that they had mixed all the soil up, some of the ground up cement up, they've disturbed the thing a great deal. So any one sample is probably not adequate. They probably should have done multiple samples. The testing performed by for the asbestos, which was a thing of concern, was the most of the EPA tests that are available, is the most insensitive. It's sort of they screwed up. They did not really follow through in a complete manner. Alan Kluger in that meeting was concerned about this not happening again. That the borough has an obligation, as does the developer, to assure that the property is safe to build residential properties. Next month, I would like to propose some changes to our completeness criteria in the rules and regulation. And also I'd like to propose some changes to the site application. And finally, if there is a question about the environmental issues for a site, that they cannot disturb the site until they have submitted a plan of how they're going to deal with it, or a plan or a test results where they have resolved all the issues. But that's what I'd like to do for next month as a topic for the planning board. Also, full
So
list-
before we,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so before we leave that, that sounds like two things. One is for perhaps, Bruce, there's something to shed light on where the status is with 238. And then I guess the next piece would maybe go back to Roger in terms of if we were going to do something in terms of a future, some change to the completeness or the site application. Right, Roger? You're
With
muted.
regard to the second part, that's certainly within the board's prerogative. You can certainly make recommendations to the governing body to change and actually it's an ordinance change. You can certainly make those recommendations, and you can discuss that at the meeting in October.
Okay, so we'll just ask Jen to add that too. So Jen, can you just make a note that we're gonna discuss that at the October meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and then Bruce, I don't know if you had any comment that you wanted to make, or whether we were
Yes.
sort of.
I was just letting others speak. Yes, I just got a set of plans, I think on Tuesday, for resolution compliance. I was waiting for that, so I would do everything in one fell swoop. I will conduct that review prior to your next meeting and will issue a letter to the board, which will explain whether there are deficiencies. Alan and I have been speaking about this sometimes via email, sometimes on the phone, just to discuss what's going on there. And I think there are some gaps. I think that it may not only be the rules of the planning board. You may want to see if the governing body would amend the ordinances as well. Because as you observed in this case, the developer decided to do what he was going to do. And that isn't over yet, because ultimately NLSRP has to sign off to me. I won't sign off on the project until that happens, so that we have something on file for the public, a potential buyer of a home, to look at and see and be able to feel some level of comfort that the professional who's responsible for this has done all the review that they should do, and put them, as well as myself and the board, in a comfortable feeling or position. So that is what I will be doing. Of course, I will need Mr. Constantine's input, but not as it relates to the environmental issues, but as part of resolution compliance. So I may, if he is not prepared to issue his report at that time, I will issue mine as it speaks to the engineering and environmental issues, and Mr. Constantine can follow up with a separate memo, and we'll move forward that way.
Okay, so I'm not going to actually recuse myself for this conversation, but Alan Kluger, do you have any comments, I guess, at this time, or things that you
No,
just
I don't think
want to
anything
make
yet.
sure is covered?
I think Alan laid out all the issues appropriately, and you know, I've also had discussions with Bruce. So when he said he was talking with Alan, it could have been either of us, but
It was both. I apologize for not clarifying that. But
that's
we
okay.
both- There has been an open dialogue regarding this.
Right. So I think, and I also did see some of the documents come through for resolution compliance, and I think we'll have a look at those and do what we need to do for both for this application and for moving forward.
Okay.
Collegia has a
Okay.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Collegia? It's hard. I'm not
My
seeing
question
everything.
is for Bruce. Could you point us in the direction of where we might find any information regarding what the current requirements are for a commercial building demolition? What are our sort of rules about that, just in preparation for the conversation about this next month?
I don't govern that, so I could tell you what my experience is, but the building department would be able to tell you more about when somebody comes in and asks for a demolition permit, what the requirements of the permit are. I could give you a brief overview, but I don't know if that's going to cover everything that you're asking for.
Oh, so maybe that's something Scott can speak to. Is that what you're
So
saying?
you-
It's more specific to Highland Park?
Depending on what they're coming in for, if they're coming in for a demo permit, we'd make sure that, all the utilities are disconnected. We make sure they're capping the water and sewer lines at the mains and the utilities, and then they can take down what they want to take down. We end up getting an asbestos report for the commercial building, and that's about it.
And Scott, I don't mean to step on your toes there, but also the extermination, right? There's always an extermination as well.
That you usually
that?
get that with the asbestos letter.
Okay.
What is,
very good.
so Bruce, what do you mean by extermination?
Prior, within a certain number of hours of the demolition, there's an extermination done so that unwanted critters don't take off onto the neighboring properties or into their homes or something.
Pests, right?
Oh,
Pests.
interesting.
I'm trying to
Didn't
be,
know about. Yeah,
I'm trying
no,
to be
well, I think
politically
being more
correct about it,
explicit is
but-
better because that's a very interesting aspect that I was not aware of. And that's, you're saying with commercial buildings, that's
residential
unique to
as
commercial
well.
building. Oh,
I think it's all buildings. I will defer to Mr. Brescher, but my experience in doing contracts for demolition of buildings in the borough, we've included that in it.
Yeah.
so Scott, in your opinion, would you say that that you feel like the ordinance as it stands, I guess that's what you're relying on, that supports you in the way that you know, in other words, for what you would want in a demo permit?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just have to see if anyone has any questions.
Kim?
Collegia? I'm gonna call Collegia first, then we'll go to you, Alan.
So, and also I think Matt had his hand up before me.
I'm sorry, it's
Okay,
very
go
hard.
for it.
I'm on a phone, so I can only see 4 faces at a time. So I'm trying to scroll around, so bear with me. But we'll go to
Matt,
Collegia and then we'll go to Pedro.
Yeah, Collegia, go ahead.
Okay, so I was just asking, or I wanted to ask a follow-up about the asbestos letter. Do we also require anything with regards to lead paint or any other like environmental contaminants that can be in an old building?
Depending on the situation, I mean, this building was just a cinder block, and brick building. So I'm not requiring any lead paint for that because it's really all the block.
They did test for lead.
I'm sorry, Alan, you're saying that applicant did happen to test for lead?
On one sample, they did test for lead, yes.
Matt, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that if we're expecting Jim Constantine something from him, that we need to communicate that to him, that something is needed. So Bruce, I just want to make sure you're going to do it. I'm going to do it. Who's going to communicate to Jim what he
They
needs
are,
for the next meeting as a result of this?
they are familiar with the process. I can't sign off without their sign off, without all outside agency permits. I'm kind of like the clearinghouse. Everything comes through me or a person in my role, and then lets it be released when they feel that everything that's required comes in. I've had numerous conversations over the course of Mr. Constantine's involvement with the borough, with both he and with Chris about the process. So I think they clearly understand. My only point was that we could issue separate letters on that, but if we were getting to the point of having to bring it to conclusion and say it was ready, I would not do that without Mr. Constantine's or Chris's sign off to me. We'll also need, if there's a county road permit, county planning board approval or waiver, soil conservation approval or waiver, all of that has to be routed through. And I sort of check off all those items. And then eventually, when that's all done, then we do the bond calculation, issue the letter that says they've complied with all the conditions of the resolution. And as we were talking about earlier, one of them is going to be, or it won't get released, is a letter from an LSRP saying the site is safe for occupancy as a residential property. That is the ultimate letter in all of this. That I agree that there have been some less than perfect things done along the way, but somewhere an LSRP has to make that, prepare that letter and sign it. And I won't accept it from anybody but an LSRP because they are audited by the DEP or open to audit by the DEP. And therefore that is kind of their honor system.
Your license is at stake.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, did someone still have a comment? Maybe Pedrick, or I'm not sure who still had their hand up.
Doesn't appear as though anybody else does.
No, okay. Okay, seeing that, I will move on. I think the only other thing, and again, I'm not sure that this is something that we need to discuss, but I think after our last meeting, there was something from Terry Hover about the redevelopment plan, which I guess goes back to council on 9/14. So Roger, are you aware of anything that we needed to know about, or Alan,
No.
am I forgetting something?
Not aware.
No, okay. And Alan Kluger, no?
No, I think they made some changes to the plan. I don't think anything, I mean, actually, Matt is here.
Oh, or Matt, sorry about that.
No, I don't think that there's anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the suggestions of wording that we talked about, we did. So I don't think there's any significant differences to bring up. So.
Okay. So the only other thing that I have notes on are, Roger, you so moving from that matter, is the other suggestions we made about ordinance change that we had talked about in our January meeting, and then resurfaced again, I think at our last meeting, and then Roger sent a letter to, I guess, the mayor and council, and we were copied on that, just about our request for the materials that go to the redevelopment agency also coming to the planning board, and then those professionals being available to us for questioning. So Roger, can you just update us? Is there anything that?
Yeah, there was a suggested modification that I received from Mr. Schmier, the borough attorney, and then Terry indicated that he wanted, or excuse me, she wanted to have some discussions with the borough council and Mr. Schmier before it got distributed to the board. So I haven't heard anything since that time. That was probably week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So then I think the only thing we have left on our agenda would be any committee report, which any special meetings. And I think the only thing Scott, if you have any updates, either projects or I guess prior applications. I'm curious about the parking procurement for the property on the corner of Second and Raritan, the former international shop. Do we know what's going on with that?
He has his parking requirements. I spoke to him today. He's getting me over the letter of where the parking, getting me copies of the parking agreements. He should have those to me most probably by Monday.
Oh, wow, that's great. So do you know where he has secured parking?
No, I don't.
Has he told you? So he basically shows you that there's a contract, and then that's the final piece of his compliance, and then you release the CO. Is that it?
Well, I'm gonna reach out to who has the agreement with, just to make sure that he just didn't put down.
That it's a real agreement.
Yeah.
And what because it's interesting, it's like one of those properties that got developed and then it sat there, which seemed finished. Now a lot of times something looks finished and there's obviously a lot of sort of back end stuff that still to come. But do you think it was just the parking thing that was holding them up, or they're actually through with their other inspections yet?
No, he had some personal issues there for a while that derailed him for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Other than that.
But it is just the CO and he's ready to go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope they basis. That would be great. So is there, I don't know, does anyone have any other properties or applications that they have any status questions on for Scott or anybody else? Nope. Sorry, it takes me a minute to spin through the group here. Okay. All right.
Khalidra has a question.
Khalidra has a comment.
I'm sorry.
or
See,
question.
it's hard. Okay. Yes, Khalidra. Sorry.
Yes,
Oops, you're muted.
I'm coming in and out. There's property on South 7th Avenue. The address, I believe, was 410 South 7th Avenue was the lot that was being subdivided. What is the status with that?
You mean that
They-
last subdivision that we had, that resolution?
Yeah, it was being subdivided and 2 new homes were proposed to be built on that lot. And I pass that lot all the time and see that there's nothing happening there. So I was just curious.
So I
Yeah,
will preface who's ever going to respond to that just by saying, once an applicant gets their resolution, they can sit on that for a long time if they choose to. In other words, like, we're giving them the permission. It doesn't mean that they need to act in a certain amount of time. But I'll let Scott or whoever would be obviously more informed answer your question.
We didn't receive any permits yet. What I was seeing a lot of with the increase in material costs, a lot of people have been pushing their projects off if they could for a little bit, waiting for prices to come down. Because I mean, for a standard house, I was hearing it's just in lumber alone, the extra cost is about $15,000. So a lot of people are just kind of holding off, waiting for prices to come down before they actually start again.
So the developer, in waiting to start their project, I totally understand, but what responsibility do they have to maintain that lot? Because it's like crazy overgrown and attracting a lot. I mean, that lot backs onto woods as it is, and behind that lot is the Buckwood area that has already seen a lot of trees come down in preparation for the building that's going to go there. And the lot that it's there now, they demolished it and it's an empty lot now, but it's now like an empty, very overgrown lot.
Well,
I don't know if, is there a property maintenance code, Scott? That
yeah,
I don't.
yeah, I'll reach out to the developer tomorrow and tell him he's got to, cut it down and keep it maintained until he's ready to do what he's going to do.
Yeah, because it's a really big lot and it's surrounded by houses. So there's neighbors on either side and neighbors right across the street.
Okay, yeah, I'll reach out to
Okay.
him tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Scott.
All right.
All right. Does anyone have anything else for Scott's to-do list for tomorrow?
Nothing else is gonna happen, so you can settle your part.
We'll give you to-do list.
Scott, that guy from International Foods wants 2 trash cans. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
What is,
Call me.
why are
Whatever
you
that
telling
means.
me?
I don't know who else to tell. Of all
I
the
don't have-
faces,
I don't have my
all the faces I
DPW
see
hat on.
you. You're the one that stands out as the person who should know that information.
Yeah, well, I don't have my DPW hat on.
We'll get it to DPW.
Well,
That's,
full disclosure, I gave him your number. He says
Well,
I
they're
already
not-
have it. I already have
they're
it.
not gonna, yeah, they're not gonna get too far because that is
Yeah.
obviously someone else's territory. Oh, all right. Does anyone have a business that they want to bring forth at this time?
Nobody's
Seeing
raising
and
their hand.
hearing none, I'm scanning. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Was that Pedrick? I will take a second on that.
Okay.
Alan, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Bye.